are live and live and live. Fading the music up, you can't hear it because I forgot to do your mic. Now I've done it. That will get fixed in the post-edit. Probably not because I don't know how. Sharon, take it over in 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to our Here's Tinpot 2 podcast. Sorry, completely lost it.
Welcome to what, sorry? History?
Who knows? What
is it welcome to?
It's Tinpot 2 podcast.
Right, I mean, one of the co-chairs and the creator of Here to Tinpot 2 thought we were on a history lesson. Anyway, so this is part 4 of the 10-part mini-series within the podcast around our book. You can get our book available on all good shops, only on Amazon, which is probably the only one where you want to buy it from anyway. Let me get that in focus. Oh, God. Can't stretch that far. It's not going in focus. Anyway, I can't do that. Anyway, if you're listening, then you don't really care about that. The book is called You Are Sexy and We Know It, Humanizing Customer Experience in the World of Tech. Now, before you go to sleep and before you switch off and go, oh, God, that sounds really boring. What I'd like to do and what I would like to continue to do is the format that we've used. Now, if you've listened back to the previous 3, you will know that I had a plan at the start that was agreed, then subsequently changed halfway through. I didn't agree, and then I had to agree, and then now we are where we are. So the format is sort of on track, if not changed slightly, because I was not allowed to have my way, but why would you? Obviously, some people have got to just put their little spin on things. Anyway, we need to make sure that we're not too passive-aggressive, don't we, Sharon?
Why don't you just start?
Oh, you could sense the venom then, couldn't you, boys and girls? This is going to be a fun podcast. So, I am reading page 36 in the book, and as before, I'm going to read out the text in the book, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards. And this chapter is called Pulling on the Lion's Tail. Now, you might be sat there thinking, well, what do you mean by that? Is this sort of like a Steve Irwin type sort of chapter? It's not. And it'll make sense when I explain it. But it's a short chapter. It's like a page and a half, to be honest, because there's a lovely picture in the book of 3 lions. But we have the key takeaway, which I'll read. And again, just to reiterate the point on how this book is structured, you have a key takeaway at the start of every chapter. So that's if you're running to a meeting and you've got 10 or 15 seconds and you need some sort of inspiration, boom, your key takeaway's there. The MKLism is very much our spin on the subject. So it will be either tongue-in-cheek or a very emotional story or something in between, usually some swearing. And then you've got the main body, which is the actual sort of meat of the sandwich, so to speak, about how this sort of works. And then at the end, you've got the call to action. So that's I've read everything. So what? What do I do with that? So let's get on with it. Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, yep. A bit more enthusiasm, but we'll get there, boys and girls. So the key takeaway: know what going over capacity looks like. Don't overstretch too much. Okay. So the MKLism. I wrote this bit. A good piece of advice I received was don't stop selling, even when you're busy. However, use caution with this advice, as you just might get what you want. You might have lots of projects, lots of prospects, what a great place to be, and you're likely working your ass off to convert them. Imagine being stood in the middle of a room. Surrounding you in a circle are 12 lions, a bit like a clock face, sort of stood in the middle, all facing away, so they've got the bums to you. In essence, no matter which way you look, you're facing a lion's tail. There's a catch. These lions are your prospects. Pull one tail and it just might turn around. One lion to take on might be a handful, yet possibly manageable. Lions are pack animals. They smell blood and then they all want to come to the party. So what happens if another lion turns around, and then another, and then another? Pretty soon you're eaten alive. The main body now. If you're an up-and-coming tech business, you might be in startup scale-up stage, a huge period of growth. This period is about exploratory action, and being intentional. A terrible piece of advice I received was, when talking to your customer/potential customer, say yes. Now, what's the question? I mean, just to say that again, the piece of advice that I got, which was terrible, is whatever a customer says, just say yes, and then have to say, what is the question? And we'll talk about that afterwards as to why that's dangerous. From a sales and marketing point of view, this might sound like great advice. However, this is a very dangerous strategy. Say yes to the right things, to the things that fit with your strategy, with your goals, with your future direction. Yes, there are going to be times when there is an opportunity that was not on your plan, which is way too good to miss. Say yes to that as well, but don't say yes to everything. This is a fine balance. You're setting yourself and your customers up for failure, taking on a project, job, problem before you know what it is, or even if it's in your capability and capacity to take on, and this will cost you dearly. Of course, you might get lucky and the gamble could pay off, but how long will your luck last? So be discerning. What's your capacity? Say yes, but weigh up any risks. Watch the tails that you're yanking on. Never overpromise or blag to a customer. No one likes a blagger. And the call to action is, tempting as it may be to say yes to everything, be clear on the goals and opportunities that you really want to say yes to. Focus your eyes on those and push hard for them. Are you all clear as a team what you're going after, or are you all pulling in different directions, magpieing here, there, and everywhere? So magpieing is, when a magpie sees something shiny, and then off it goes. Short but sweet is that one. But I remember when we first started as a company, and as people will know, I spoke about this in the past. John, my business partner, he's learned the hard way about the say yes now, what is the question methodology. And as it says in that chapter there, when you're a startup business, you're trying to grab at everything and anything to convert. I was recently at a meeting with a load of startups, and I found it quite fascinating when we were doing the introductions. We were the one we were generating revenue. We had clients, we had a product, or we have a product, we have employees. But a lot of these startups didn't even have a first product, and they were pre-revenue. Yet the prospects that they were explaining sounded fascinating, but I was sat there from not a cynical point of view, but more of a point of view to think, if one of those turns around and converts, great. And these were obviously pre-investment as well. So the point of this workshop was for investment. But if 2, 3, 4 turn around and convert and want a piece of the action, then what? And you can imagine, can't you, Sharon, from a customer point of view, they don't care if you've got 1 prospect converting or 5 converting. You've done the pitch, you've done the sale, you've managed to get them to agree to transact with you. Now they want to transact with you. You then don't want to go, I can't handle this.
Yeah, it's both from a customer and an employee point of view, isn't it, really? It's CX and EX, because you're dead on there. If you've promised a customer and you've agreed the scope of a project, you've agreed the timelines, and then you go, oh, actually, now we've got 3 projects that have all landed at the same time. It's just the timing. Now I've got to go back to one, or I'm going to have to give them a slightly degraded service. They'll feel that. And if you set expectations up front that, you're going to handhold, look after them, all the good things that we talk about in CX, and then you can't do it because you're so stretched, Yeah, that's never going to feel good for anybody. And from an employee point of view, they are all going to be spread really thin as well and going, well, what's my priorities? We've got two fantastic clients here and this other one that's just coming in as well. Which one's most important? Should any of them be more important than the other? How do I manage this as an employee? How do I deliver to them all? So then the whole team feels stretched, and then just normal standard interactions every day with customers and each other is harder. So it has a
And
knock-on effect all the way round.
and it's a fine balance, isn't it? Because I can't remember that. I think it was. I think it's the CEO of Under Armour. I want to say. I might have got that wrong. So correct me when I tell the story. If I have got the company wrong, but I believe it was Under Armour that when that company first started, the founder had two business cards.
That's right, yeah.
And one of them said CEO, the other one said salesperson or salesman or business development director or whatever it might be. It was something to do with sales. And he would give those cards out depending on the environment he was in and who he was talking to. And the reason you do that, or the reason he did that, is one, to make himself seem bigger than he was, because it was just him, but also to seem credible when he's talking to these prospects. And that's the sort of like fine balancing act of being a startup, because when you're talking to customers, they don't want to be the first one to buy your product. Who wants to be the first? You don't really say to a customer, do you? Wow, thank you for that. You've given me my first sale. Let me integrate with your assets and do this. Okay. You never want to be the first, but someone has to be the first. But I don't want to call this lying. Let's call it a bending of the truth. Which is, you have to give the perception when you first start that you are, I don't want to say more credible, I have to say more established than you necessarily might be, especially if you're not funded.
Yeah.
Because if you're going hunting for lions, as the chapter says, you need the resources, one, to be able to hunt them, and two, when they want a bit of the action back. Because if you can't fight with those lions or convert those lions to being a pussycat, then you're only going to do that once or twice, and then before you know it, you're scratching around for the house cats of the world rather than the lions out in the savannah, and you never be able to convert anything enough to be able to scale the way that you want it to be. So it's a very fine balance, and it's a nice equation and a problem to have. I mean, if we were to say now, you look at the prospects that we've got, if they all turn around and converted tomorrow, it would be a challenge. It would be a challenge from a resource point of view, because you can't have guys and girls sat on a coat hook waiting for work to come in. You have to scale as a result of the work that you're winning. But you also can't scale on a prospect, especially if you're not funded.
Yeah,
because
that's very difficult.
Well, exactly, because then you go, well, it's like saying, I've got a £3 million pipeline. Great, well done. What's the reality of that pipeline? I don't know. Well, let's be very generous here and say 50% of that converts. So you've got 1.5 million quid that you could convert there within the next 12 months. Okay. So what resources have we got available for that? Well, we've got resource available to manage probably about 300-400 grand's worth of work at any one point in time. So there's £1 million gap there, not in terms of revenue, but in terms of the resource that you'd need to service that revenue to convert it. So what do you do? So you almost have to. You've seen again. I can't. There's African tribes, isn't there, where as a part of their manhood, so when a young boy becomes a man in these tribes, they have to go up and slap a lion's bum. Have you seen that?
No.
Yeah, so they go up and they give a lion a crack on the backside, a sleeping lion, and then run away.
Okay.
That's to test their manhood. I mean, people watching this, Google it. I mean, it's fascinating to see. I mean, these young lads, they're kids, but they're as to test their manhood, they have to go and find a lion and then give it a crack on backside, and then run away. And this is a little bit like where this story came from, or this chapter came from, was around that pulling on a lion's tail. Is, sometimes a lion won't even register that you're there. They might go, "Oh, what was that?" And this is very similar to prospects. Everybody's trying to get their attention. You might even yank that lion's tail, and they might even turn up and sit up and turn around and look at you, and then go, "It's not even worth my time, this, because you're skinny, you haven't got the resources to match me. Fight. You're not going to bring it to me." Yeah. But then one day, you slap that lion on the backside, and it goes, "Right then, okay,
let's go.
Let me get up and do a little stretch, and I'm going to munch you now if you can't match me." Because ultimately it's a fight. If that lion wants a piece, then that young lad has got to be able to protect himself. You think about that from a conversion point of view in terms of the sale. If that client wants a piece and you can't tame that client and then get them to agree to the transaction, because again, you haven't got the resources or the capabilities to match it, then what?
I think a lot of it is on timing, isn't it? Because the problem you have with business is you never just have a smooth, every day planned out perfectly. I mean, with what we do in MKLCX, we deliver events. And with events, things get changed at the last minute, or someone gets sick, and it's not just, okay, 5 days a week, they're planned, then they're planned, then they're planned, then they're planned. It's never like that. It's like you have 3 or 4 of them who want it in the same week, and then you've got a couple of weeks who've got nothing. So it's really then difficult. That's part of the problem, isn't it? Juggling that without letting people down, and getting it right. And if you know in advance that you've agreed to all of these lions, then you can be really upfront and honest and say, well, look, actually, I'm already committed there, but I can do here. But it's when it's a no, maybe, soon, yes. And then they're all suddenly yes at the same time. You're like, how am I going to manage that?
Yeah.
That's when it's really tough, especially, as you say, when they're all lions. They're not pussycats. They're lions that you've been going after for a really long time, absolute dream client that is going to make you. And you've got maybe 3 of them suddenly. And you're like, yes. How do I make this work?
Yeah,
That's a challenge.
Exactly, because it's I remember this the other week. I had a Teams call with someone from KPMG, and it was more of an introductory call. Let me tell you about us, KPMG. In terms, everybody knows what KPMG do, but there's a lot of things that KPMG do that I didn't know what they did. I just, you look at them as an accounting sort of business, but they don't. They do all sorts of things. And it was a little bit of a, introduction. Let me tell you some of the services. Maybe you can buy some of those services, but let me find out a little bit more about your business, etc. And as we're going through this conversation, and the questions are being asked of, what sort of clients have you got? Where are you with your revenue? Where are you with your funding, etc. And then when I told them what the revenue was, the clients we had, the size of our workforce, and then that question was around resource in terms of investment, and I said, no, we're not funded. We bootstrapped this from the start. We didn't go for investment because we went down the conversation, but I don't want to change the harmony of the structure of the management, because it seems to work at the moment, and I don't know what sort of dynamic change. It could be good, or it could be bad, and if it's bad, then that's a disaster. If it's good, then great, but it's a bit too much of a gamble at the moment, considering that we are doing everything right. But it was fascinating that they sort of sat back and went, oh, so you got to there sort of like on your own? And I went, well, not on my own, but there are others. But I'm on about in terms of, if you're saying on your own as in we didn't have external help from an investment point of view, then yes, we have got to this stage. And it was fascinating to see their face to go, well, I don't really hear this very often. Because again, if you go back to that point I was saying at the start around these very early startups that are pre-product, pre-revenue, but they've got fantastic pipelines, they are there for investment so they can scale their businesses. But we decided to do it a different way. So we pulled on some lion's tails, and maybe call it timing, call it skill, or call it luck, but to your point, Sharon, around timing, that is key because they converted at the right time. So we didn't have them all converting at once because we would have been doomed for failure. We would have failed. We would, because without having any investment, and you can't say someone going, when you first start and you've got, you're doing $6 or $7 a month and you're in your bedroom, and then someone goes, right, there's a 40 or there's a 50 grand PO.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a different conversation altogether. Nice problem to have, but it's a very different conversation to have. And if you have 4 or 5 of those at the same time, then I pretty much guarantee that without any external help, you are going to burn out and you're going to piss a load of people off, your customers, and you don't want that. So the timing is key. But from a customer point of view, Sharon, one of the things that I found that has worked really well for us is we constantly say this, and I hear John say it all the time as well, is there's a line that will go, great, we're having this chat about work coming up or projects that are coming down the track, and then the next line out of his mouth will be, but please just don't drop it on me.
Yeah.
Don't come to me on a Friday and then say, right, on Monday I need 10 guys on here doing this and doing that, because again, the line is, we are doomed for failure. And you can tell me this, Sharon, but how many organizations do you see having these conversations with their customers? Or it goes back to that, yes, now what is the question? Those people that have that mantra probably won't even say that to them. They just go, yes, 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 yes. And then they get the work and go, well, they've already signed the contract now. Who cares?
Well, that's straight back to setting expectations, isn't it? You've got to, as part of building that relationship, you've got to show that you're both human, both sides. And if you're just going, yeah, absolutely, whatever happens, I'll deliver it, knowing that there's only a slim chance that you can, as you say, completely setting both sides up for failure because it's a shared project. You can't deliver your project without them on the other side as well working together. So yeah, if you're setting up expectations in the front, exactly as John and you do, to say, because we know what it's like in corporates, don't we? It takes so long sometimes, so long. You get, yes, we're nearly there, yes, we're nearly there, yes, and then suddenly someone big comes in and just goes, yeah, just get it done. And then and they say, right, ring the supplier this afternoon, get it done. I want it done Monday. And sometimes we have this situation and we do have to react. But if we've already let them know in advance to say, work with us here, we're going to need a little bit of time just to get boots on the ground, because resources, you do need to do that. That at least means that they stay closer to the phone and they go, okay, I think it's going to happen, and give us that heads up. That's all part of building relationships and having those good, honest conversations as you start onboarding a customer and get to know them both ways.
And you can flip that on its head, can't you, and say, I mean, we've been in this situation quite a few times as well, where it's almost nailed on, guaranteed that it's going to happen, and then at the last minute it gets stopped or harpooned or something that, as a supplier, you're not privy to the politics in the background, but you're being told by the customer, guaranteed, happening, get me a price, raise a PO, and it's going to happen. Right, okay, great, we'll do the survey, we'll get you a price, there's your price, can I have a PO? Oh, actually, there's someone that's happened now. And this is where you've got to have a lot of balls, a lot of nerve to be able to or hold your nerve, because imagine being told by the client that it's going to happen, but I would say nothing happens until it happens. Yeah. Now you might be getting told by a client that it's going to happen, and let's say you've got investors that are breathing down your neck to start getting your revenue numbers up, and you need to be meeting your quarterly targets. You'd be saying this to your investors as well, right? I've been told it's going to happen. I need X amount of headcount for this. It's going to happen. It doesn't happen. You've got a swelled headcount. You haven't got the orders to cover it. Your client's pissed off. You're pissed off. Your investors are pissed off. Then what? So it's such a fine balancing act. This is something that you only get with experience, I would say. From the outside looking in, if you haven't done this before, it isn't something that you can just read in a book.
No, and you're going to win some and lose some, aren't you? So with every client, you're going to have to do a bit of pre-sales work, and you've got to work out, as almost a gamble, isn't it? How much do I prep? Because if I know it's like 90% going to go ahead, I'm going to do as much work as I can get away with to make sure that when it starts smoothly and we make a brilliant impression. But I don't want to throw, we're a small company. We don't want to throw away resource either, when actually that could be used for something else that is going to happen. So it's always, having to use your head and be strategic and go, do I go with that one? Do I go with that one? And how do I balance it? Constant balance.
And I remember being in a meeting with someone, we'll keep names out, but I remember being in a meeting and the client was asking questions around delivery. Now, we were there as a supplier to our main contact, and this main contact, it was his client. So we were there in that room as a confidant, so to speak, just to make sure that what was being said we could deliver on. And the conversation was fine at the start, and then towards the end of the conversation, the demands for the client were going up, and our contact was saying yes. Now, you might be sat there thinking, well, why don't you just say no? But it's a difficult situation to be in when there's already revenue committed and there's already revenue being spent. For you to then undercut your contact, your client, in front of the other client, it's a very dangerous, choppy ground. So I remember coming out of that situation, and I learned a very, very valuable lesson then. One, I would never allow myself to be in that position. And if I was in that position again, I would instantly say, no, this can't be done. But these were the early days of the company. And again, as I said, I didn't know. So it was just learnings for us. But I remember saying to the guy afterwards, well, why did you say yes to that? Because I know right now we can't do that. And the comment I got back was, well, once I sign the agreement, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's harder for them to get out of the agreement than it is to not pay. And I just... That for me was an unbelievable comment. I'll never forget that.
That makes me so uncomfortable from a CX point of view. And listeners, you won't be able to see my face when Mark was saying that, but it was like literally, It's the sort of thing you do not want to hear, because you're just setting everyone up for failure. And from that sort of attitude, from that early on as well, you're basically saying, look, we know we're going to let the customer down, but we don't really care up front.
Well, exactly. It's like someone calling your baby ugly. You know what it's like when you've got a new toy or a new car or your baby and you're really proud, and someone goes, ugh. I mean, imagine that from a client point of view. I've signed my contract. I got promised all these things in the meeting. We get to do this. That issue that's been a problem for me for the past 2 years is going to go away. Right, let's do this for 1 month review. I can't wait to see what the KPIs are. And then the other side of it are coming back with all the excuses as to the reason why it's not being delivered. And who wants to hear that as a client?
Well, yeah. And then it's so, if you get it wrong at the start, it's then so difficult to embed and make sure it lands properly in that corporation. Yeah, setting it up wrong to start with is just such a no-no.
This chapter goes throughout the entire organization, doesn't it, if you think about it? Because we had this conversation, I think it was in the second part of this, where we were talking about, or I can't remember if it was the first, the importance of the Cxo role. Whereas you can imagine how a sales team is incentivized. Maybe they are incentivized to pull on that lion's tail. Maybe their KPIs and their bonuses are aligned to conversion. Maybe. But then if the resources aren't in play in a position, and then I'm not just mean resources in cash, I mean around, yes, you can get someone to sign an agreement, but how do you convert them from being just another client to being an advocate for the business? That's where this whole CX part starts to come into it, because you need to be able to, it's like fishing, isn't it? You need to be able to land the catch, but then you need to be able to skill it and cook it afterwards, because what's the point in landing it then just to let it go again? There's no point in doing that. So how are the sales teams incentivized? Are they incentivized on bringing new business in, which they should be, but then are they incentivized in terms of retention? So the client is still there after 3 months or 6 months or whatever that might be, and part of their bonus is held back as a result because they need to make sure that the resources are in line to be able to convert that. I don't know. I'm just waxing lyrical here, but I'm sure Sharon can help me sort of.
No, I agree with you there, and that's why you've got to get your sales team and your ops team, who ultimately deliver, or your project team, whichever it is in your organization, to be tightly connected, because otherwise you do get the sales teams, making all these promises, and you set up the ops team automatically for failure. And as soon as you have a disconnect between your ops and your frontline, your starter team, whatever that looks like for your onboarding, that's when everything just starts to fall apart, because you just get people throwing grenades across the, oh, it was such and such, oh, the salesman told you that, no, that's wrong, and that looks terrible from a customer point of view. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was training a group of people yesterday, and I said to the group, I was 25 on the phone, what's the best thing that's happened to you this week from a customer point of view? Excuse me. And one guy said, oh, do you know what was really great this week? I had a 4-hour slot for a delivery, and the parcel deliverer actually did it in the slot. And that had made his week. And it was that good, in inverted commas, that he wanted to share that in front of the whole class. And I was a little bit shocked, because from my point of view, that is absolute what that's your bread and butter as a deliverer. You should be doing that. So anything above and beyond that, that's what's amazing and should be shared with the class, not just, oh, someone turned up and did what they wanted, what they said they could do. But that's what happens if the sales team constantly say, yes, we're going to do this, yes, we're going to do that, and then don't deliver, or the rest of the team can't deliver. You get to a place when a customer is amazed when you do deliver, and that's a horrible place to be.
We call that brilliant basics, don't we?
We do. Yeah.
So you do the basics right, because you, as Sharon just explained, then you'd be surprised at how powerful just getting the basics right can have an impact. But getting the basics wrong is a massive. I mean, how many times of people listening to this, you stayed home to have your boiler serviced, or something was happening that day where you needed to be around the house, and it was really inconvenient because you had childcare to sort out, or maybe you had to take a day of holiday, or you missed a meeting, or whatever it might be, and then they don't turn up because they either got stuck on another job, which maybe you can sort of appreciate, you don't know, or they just didn't arrive and you only got I mean, for example, when we're in this office here, the worst organization I've ever had any experience with from a pulling on the lion's tail point of view, in terms of what the sales team say you're going to get, and then ultimately what you don't get when it goes to operational delivery, is BT by far. I had a shocking experience with them. Told that we had no problem getting Wi-Fi, phone lines, all sorts to our new office. Great, fantastic, super excited, really fast broadband. Whoa, can't wait for that. Technology company, why wouldn't you want it? Engineer turns up on the day, oh, you haven't got this, and this. But I wasn't told that I needed to give you this, and this. All right, okay, let me just go make a phone call, and then just drives off. I stayed in the office all day to sort that out, and then you have to then ring up customer services to say, where's the engineer gone? Oh, I don't know, we outsource it to a third party. Well, I don't want to hear that as a customer. So you've taken on this work, you've agreed to give me the service, you've outsourced it to a third party, which I get, because arguably BT might not be the experts in this area, so I get you outsource. But don't use that as an excuse, the fact that you're outsourcing, to the fact that why I've had a bad experience, because you haven't got the resources to be able to manage that order. And that was such a poor experience that we dropped them after the second attempt, and an engineer didn't even turn up on the second attempt. Told it was going to be in, it was all booked in the diary. Again, I waited, changed meetings, changed diary. Nobody even turned up. After the second time, it was just like, nah, we can't do this. And BT, obviously, I got out of the agreement with no penalty clauses or anything like that. But it was the inconvenience that they couldn't even get the basics right. They couldn't even do, as we say, brilliant basics. And because they failed on the basics, I remember saying to my business partner, if they're failing on this, what happens when there is a problem?
Exactly. And that's why we built our service behaviours for all of our engineers, to make sure that all of those brilliant basics were in there, and even down to things like you turn up and you are presentable. We call that wash your bum, which is like
just to reiterate, that is called wash your bum, and you are hearing that right. Wash your bum is part of the service behaviours.
That was so uncomfortable when I first had to have that discussion. But yeah, that's kind of like turning the service behaviours into something that's very easy to understand and get your head round, and you can relate to it if you already have that kind of engineering banter every day anyway. But what it means is you turn up on time when agreed. If there's any issues, you ring immediately and we sort it. And you turn up and you be presentable and you speak how the customer speaks. There's no effing and jeffing. That's all that's in there in the service behaviours to make sure that we do that, because we've learned from ourselves and been on the other end of being a customer that those things are so important.
Those brilliant basics, you can't underestimate it, because going back to the title of this one, pulling on that lion's tail, if you do pull on it and they turn around and they're just asking for the basics of the start of that agreement or that engagement or whatever it might be, and you can't deliver on those brilliant basics, then straight away they're going to be thinking, well, what if there is a major problem? What happens then? And if you're in the technology world and you're integrating with assets, or you're monitoring critical equipment or whatever it could be, that's a very dangerous place to be, because your credibility starts to then get questioned as a result of that. Now, there are ways around this, and I don't mean around it as in, to pull the wool over people's eyes, but there are ways to pull on a lion's tail but manage the expectations, and that could be by becoming innovation partners with a bigger company and let them manage the relationship, and then you come in at a certain part of that relationship where you are there to provide a service, and then you step away. When you're a smaller company, that's probably a smarter move to do than go and hunt the big boys on your own, especially if you haven't got investment. But also, if you are going to hunt the big boys, and you just have to be mindful that they are going to have expectations like a big company. They just do. What you consider snail's pace is for them lightning quick. Getting a PO raised, or sending an email, or getting someone in a department to do this or to do that. For them, they could be sprinting, but you're in a slow jog, or you're not even breaking a sweat. But that's the difference between a startup and a big corporate. But you're constantly pushing and pushing and pushing, going, come on, because you want it to convert. And you're going out, and I need all these things in place. Great. They're all coming in place. It's converted. Now what?
You've got the issue with the payment terms as well with a big company, haven't you? So you've got that added connection as a startup.
Yeah, that's a very good. That's a great point on pulling on that lion's tail. Yeah, if you're going for the big boys, then you're going to have to deal with big boy payment terms. I mean, some of these guys are 60 days at end of month. So if you've done your service at the beginning of January, you're getting paid at the end of March.
Yes, and you've got all your cash flow to manage as well. And if you then try to scale up for the second line who's just turned around, but you haven't been paid for the first one yet.
Dangerous. Very dangerous. But and again, there are ways around that. You could look at invoice financing, things like that. There are mechanisms in place, but again, if you're really early stage starting out, it's going to be difficult for you to get invoice financing because of the auditing that they do on the company. As a result, to get invoice financing, you have to be pretty well established for them to put that facility in place, and your clients have to be quite credible. But you also have to be transacting with your clients as well for them to give you the invoice financing. So it's a sort of like catch-22 situation. Well, I've got these guys here, but they're paying 60 days at the end of the month. Can I have invoice financing? But have you done any work with them? Well, no, because they pay 60 days at the end of the month. Well, then you can't have it. Okay, right. Can I do some work with you to get this invoice financing? But we pay 60 days end of month. Yeah, that's fine. I've depleted my cash flow. Can I have some invoice financing, please? Well, yes, you can. But then we're just going to need to get all these procedures in place and audit all your company. So it's such a difficult position to be in. But I won't change it for the world. But it's you can see the challenges that you have here. It's not just a case of trying to convert the sales. You think about those examples that we've both given throughout this and what that impact is on your customers and employees from an EX point of view. I mean, that's a different side of the equation, isn't it, Sharon? It's not just the customer that's going to get annoyed. You've got your support mechanisms in place from an employee point of view, but if that customer's getting annoyed, they're going to go straight to your contact center, and then they're getting it in the neck.
Yeah, and that can put a risk on your culture as well then, because if you're constantly going like, yes, tomorrow we're delivering, everyone ready, and then, oh no, it's fallen through. Oh, and then that person's got no work to do and they're sitting going, am I doing it? Am I doing it? Am I doing it? Am I doing it? And then it will fall through again. Or you've got to manage that really well. But yeah, if you're trying to deliver 3 lines at once and everyone is so stretched, that has a knock-on effect to your culture then as well, because everyone's just struggling.
Yeah. And you don't want to be that person as well that talks about your pipeline and your prospects, because let's say you do that, then you're constantly talking to your team about it and they don't convert. Now, there could be genuine reasons why they don't convert that have got nothing to do with you, but you have to be careful because your team might start looking at you from a credibility point of view and just thinking, well, are they not converting because it's something we're doing? You know, is this the business I thought it was? You know, it's difficult. And I'm not saying you should shield things from your team, but as I said, things only happen when they happen. So until you've got a PO in your hand and product is going in and money is flowing, nothing is real. Last 30 seconds, Sharon, from you. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think the key bit is just setting expectations up front, so that if a lion does turn around, and if you said in the book, sometimes one lion turns around and then someone else goes, oh, look what they're doing. They're a direct competitor. We're as big as them. Why don't we do the same? And suddenly you've got 3. Setting expectations with all of them and with your team, and not setting yourself up for fail. That's just the key bit with all of this.
I would say I agree with all that. But more importantly, I would also say that just be mindful that when you go and hunt for lions, you can get bit. And that's not a kink. End of the show. Sharon, goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.